Establishing battlefield control. Stand by. Primary objective achieved. Welcome back, Commander.
Hello everyone, it's Jin'taan here, and today I'm going to be talking about the fourth and final fundamental of FCing. And this is something that's a little more high level than the other fundamentals I've talked about. And what I mean by that is that it involves a lot more of the social aspects of FCing, rather than the pure mechanical decision-making skills that I've gone over previously. And that's because it is forcing mistakes. And this is a subject that I find absolutely incredibly interesting, and it's one that's open to quite a lot of debate, because to a degree you don't actually need to be able to force mistakes to win fights. It's not a 100% necessity if you are perfect at all other three fundamentals. However, I'm personally of the belief that no one is going to be perfect, and as such, you kind of want to be able to force your opponent to make mistakes that will allow you to then, exploit them, and as such win the fight. And some of this is my own personal opinion, and obviously you're going to develop your own way of doing this. You're going to develop your own style based around how you personally force mistakes in the long term. However, I think it's useful to have an understanding of the very, very basics of it right now, as as typically in EVE Online's combat, whoever makes the last aggressive decision is going to be the victor, as the last aggressive decision is normally the choice that strikes the killing blow into the enemy composition, which means that they can no longer effectively challenge you on the grid, and from there it's all about disengaging. And this is one of the reasons why I have so much love for nightmares. People who've never flown with me before probably don't know how much I love the Nightmare Doctrine, and it all comes back to this fundamental, as it's something that will allow you to make very, very aggressive decisions whilst still playing a very, very position orientated style, which is something that I've talked about previously as kind of being a strength of mine. And alongside that, still being able to make aggressive decisions. You can use your AB for a long time, and you can put yourself in these you can put your opponents in really, really awkward positions where they've got to do counterintuitive things, and if they're not used to how the doctrine is meant to be fought, then they will make incorrect decisions, and from that, you can simply slaughter them, deal that killing blow, and wipe them off the grid, saving your objective, or, just getting a ton of kills. So the first thing to think about when you're trying to force a mistake is similar to the second fundamental we went over, positioning, as in you want to understand what your opponent's plan is going to be. You want to be able to think about what their route to victory is going to look like against your doctrine. So to do that, you can try and figure out what they're flying, how they're going to fly it, and therefore try and reverse engineer what moves they're likely to make to then fight you. And that gives you a huge amount of advantage. That's basically the level 1 of being a good FC, is knowing what your opponents are going to be doing and then planning for that, rather than just planning your own route, irrespective of what your opponents do. And this comes with the same thing regarding leverage. You want to know what can my opponent's doctrine use that would either invalidate my own strengths, or how they're going to be able to win the fight. What leverage do they hold over me? And then try and think about, what can I do to minimize that? Can I refit to damps, or can I simply just not fly in a way that puts me in danger of that? And one other thing that you can do, that I personally do a lot, although I would not recommend it to everyone else, is that I will actually, if I know I'm going for a strategic objective, if I know there's going to be a big fight, I will try and find every single video of that enemy FCing as I possibly can, and I will start to analyze what they're doing. I'll start to think about, okay, this guy prefers this doctrine, he likes flying in this very specific way, he tends to prioritize these things, he, judging by what targets he calls, he either organizes his list by alphabetical, or by range, or by transversal, and from that you can really very, very quickly start to work out what their default setup is going to look like, what their default plan is going to be, and more importantly, what their default targets are going to be. And from that, you can work to protect them, work to throw him off his game, and basically just make him feel as uncomfortable as possible, like you're already inside his head. And whilst that's obviously not possible in roams, once you get to a kind of a higher level of FCing, this kind of stuff can really help you seem better than you are. And I don't consider myself a particularly great FC. I consider myself about middling tier in terms of mechanical skill, but this is one of the areas that I think I've developed a system that will allow me to get above other people. Don't think that this is something that you can only do if you have videos of the enemy. You can watch them and how they move and start to figure things like this out. If you get into a dance where you're kind of seeing where people are warping onto grid, you think about fighting for a bit, but they warp off or you warp off, and you're really jockeying for that initial engage, this is one of the best times that you can possibly have for figuring out what your opponent's decision making is. You can start to see, what are they looking for? What did they get a good position here, but they were trying to think about, engaging on this other thing? Did they land on your Logi, but really they're trying to land on top of your main DPS to use, maybe their low signature or something to mitigate it, or they're hoping to damp your Logis out whilst they're on top of you. And alternatively, you can if you trade a few blows really early, they disengage, try and re-engage to get a good positioning. You can generally bet that they're going to try for the same sort of targets the next time, although most likely not the same ships. The second point I want to go over is about taking initiative in fights. That doesn't mean just taking the initiative to engage or taking the initiative to even run your own fleet. This is about taking the first moves in fight, about forcing the tone that it's going to take. And this is something that I know a lot of FCs find, kind of difficult. They want to be passive. They want to just run things absolutely perfectly to their initial plan. That's not always the optimal way to play. You want to be able to disrupt your enemy's plan. You want to be able to take what they're trying to do, shut it down, make them confused, make them try and second guess themselves, get inside their head, and then from that use the confusion to take them out. This can be done in a variety of ways. Something as simple as using a drag bubble to take them from where they thought they were going to land to 20 to 30 km out, so that the plan that the opponent had from when he was going to engage is now completely changed, can be huge. Even if it isn't very much and it's actually something that they can compensate for, just having those couple of seconds of confusion of not understanding where he is or what he needs to do can give you a lot of time to start working on key threats, taking them off the field. The second thing I like to think about is about aggression in positioning. When we talked about ideal positioning earlier, we talked about, where is the perfect place for me to be? And that is, at the end of the day, what you want to do, but sometimes you just can't get there. And I will almost always go for it anyway, even if there are things that would stop me from doing it. You want to be able to put yourself in positions where you're putting pressure on the enemy fleet. You're forcing the enemy FC to make more decisions and more decisions and more decisions, because eventually they will miss a decision or they will make the incorrect decision, and that will open up a new plan for you. That will open up a whole wave of opportunities for you to exploit that mistake. And that's something we're going to go over later. In addition to this, you actually want to mix up your targets constantly as an FC. You don't want to be shooting the same ships, just trying to kill one or two recons, even if they do need to die. You need to be constantly changing where you're attacking. And this is something I actually like to take from fighting games. People who've played fighting games before will be familiar with the term mix-up. It's all about attack. You attack here, you attack in here, you attack here. You force them to block, basically, avenues of you doing damage to him multiple times. And this can be even simultaneous. You can, warp in your CD fleet as you come in a little closer to try and take his attention away from what you're actually doing. And this is, again, this is a bit more high level than what I expect people to be looking at when they come to this video. But really, you want to be making your opponent make as many decisions as possible, and hoping that they make the incorrect ones. One warning that I will give here, however, is about being reckless with your aggression. Don't do that. You want to be measured. You want to be putting pressure on people, but have a quick out plan if your positioning turns out to be non-viable. So, for example, if you're going within web range as Nightmares, to choose standard to, kind of really, really pressure their tanks and try and take some people off the field before then, pulling away. Or perhaps even going further, going into multi-frequency range, starting to, nuke people down, things like that. You want to know when to pull back. You want to already know, okay, so if this doesn't work, I'm going to pull off in this direction. And, you want to have your exit plan from your aggression if they react properly and you then can't exploit them further. Don't just go balls deep all the time and not have a way out. If you do that, you're going to whelp a lot of fleets. And whilst it might be fun, it's not the optimal way to play. It's definitely not the optimal way to keep people coming to your fleets. And the third point I want to go over is about exploiting mistakes. And what I mean by that is taking someone's mistake, and this can be the FC or even an individual's mistake, and then using that to reduce the enemy's leverage over you or increase your leverage over them. And that can be as simple as just, getting a kill. But it's important to keep an eye out for your enemies making mistakes, taking advantage of them by either killing them or keeping them separated. If they, for example, if the enemy FC and the enemy Logi FC do not coordinate properly, there are times where they can get a bit further away, and you can then use that to, your advantage. You can have your recons web down a couple of their logistics so that they're forced to choose between getting all of their reps in range of the enemy, fleet, or leaving their logistics behind, leaving a couple of their pairings behind, and that's a super valuable decision for you to force the enemy FC to make, as it's hard to kind of pass that information down the chain. Equally, you can look for individual mistakes. You can look for times when individual line members on the enemy team, on the enemy fleet, fuck up, and then surgically just remove them. People who've fallen off anchor, maybe they're just not paying as much attention. Maybe you'll be able to volley them really quickly because they're focusing on something else. Just removing stuff quickly, just as fast as possible, once you notice that they've made a mistake, is very important. And that can be just as little as not having perfect transversal. And one of the best ways to then, maximize your return on these mistakes is to try and start, a failure cascade within their fleet. As we all know, once you run out of something, in a fleet fight in EVE, be it, sabers, be it recons, or be it logi, you are, in real deep trouble. You need to have support. You need to have a critical mass of DPS. You need to have tackle to keep people on grid. So what you want to do is, once someone starts making a mistake within that core, if you then focus on it even more, you try and punish that mistake by, taking as many of those extra pieces they have as possible out, is of huge benefit to you. Going from 3 recons to 2 recons is a big difference. Going from 2 recons to 1 difference is insanely different. You're looking at, 1,000 meters a second difference on a primary target there, or 60 to 70% sig reduction against the enemy fleet. And that can be the not just the difference between life and death. That can be the difference between your fleet being able to survive being primary, basically, and effectively the difference between them having a critical mass of DPS and not. And that's why it's so important to then focus on it. Basically, once you've got the knife in there, once you've seen that first mistake, you've taken a chunk out, you want to keep going. You want to twist the knife as much as possible and make it hurt by minimizing what they have available to work with. And that's why you want to go for the kind of support. That this is something that actually feeds back into target prioritization. If you see that they've made a mistake with their composition, if they've overvalued logistics, but they don't have as much DPS, you can very quickly start taking out DPS, get it to the point where they don't have critical mass, and then just either bait tank them with your logistics, let people drop a little bit into armor or a little bit into structure and then rep them back up. You can do great work just chewing through the rest of them before they even notice that they've already lost the fight. And that's one of the the key things that I love about Eve is about FCing in Eve is just how much you can kind of toy with your enemies, about how much you can, how much just holding back information helps you as an FC. And that wraps up kind of the core points of exploiting mistakes as an FC. It's something that I think is almost hidden. People don't think about it very often. But now that you understand it, I'm hoping that you'll be able to find your own way of doing it. As I said before, this is something that I can't teach you directly how to do. I can only make you aware of it. I can only talk to you about, this is the effects that it can have. And what I want you to do is to try and think about what you can use in a doctrine that you know. Just pick any doctrine that you want, that you have access to, and go out there and try and make your opponents make mistakes. See what you can get them to do that is just incorrect by putting them in awkward positions or by forcing them to make, tons of decisions at once, or even by just switching up your fits and, bringing more E-War than they expect, or bringing more DPS than they expect, or bringing, more logistics or more tank than they expect. You can do quite a lot to mess with them, and the more you can do that, and the more you can plan around your opponent's plan, the better a chance it is that you are going to win that fight. Not just win it, but sometimes if you can, plan around your opponent's plan right at the start, and you can foil every mistake that they try and make to gain dominance again in that fight, you can just completely clean sweep them. You can end up with literally no losses. And this is something that I've very rarely done, but when I do, it is one of the most satisfying things in the world. Being able to just completely crush someone as an FC, know that you knew everything that they were going to do, had accounted for it, and that they still felt that they could win. It's like this crazy... I don't even know how to explain it. You just feel like you're a god for about 20 minutes afterwards. The adrenaline high from it is so real. It's better than just winning a fight by a long shot. And with that kind of concludes this series. Obviously, I'm going to be doing a Q&A afterwards. I'm going to try and look at questions that people have sent me over the course of this, be it on Reddit or in the comments or on Twitter, whatever, and produce another piece of content that hopefully answers some of them. And I'm also going to be doing some more of these styles of videos, so if you feel like giving me any feedback on how you found this, if you think there's anything I could have done better, or if you think that this style is good, do you want to see my face? Do you want this just in an audio format? Would you prefer to have this with some more video of fights? Obviously that's going to take a lot longer, but I'm looking to help grow the next generation of FCs. A lot of people have just come into the game with alphas, and they're going to need people to lead them, and that was one of the driving reasons as to why I made this series. But with that, fly smart and take care.